You need to understand that this is what I call the principle of finite volume, where the first thing you got to do is know what the beginning, find what the end is, and fill everything in between. So do you ever wonder, when do I get the time to do everything? Of course you do. Everybody in business does that. You wonder, how am I going to be able to change my product and make it better? How to improve my infrastructure, make it better? Well, it means a few things. First thing you got to do, you got to break it down. So let's take the product. Once you decide which elements of the product need to modify, change, eliminate, do something with, now is the time to go ahead and decide the top priority. And once you decide on that top priority, you need to understand that this is what I call the principle of finite volume, where the first thing you got to do is know what the beginning, find what the end is, and fill everything in between. But this is where finite volume comes into play. So the principle of finite volume says that there's only so much physical room in any space, and that if you exhaust what's in that physical space, it'll be over. It's the same thing with any part of your operation, or any task you have, or any job that you have, or any mission that you have. Ultimately, if you figure out the beginning and the end, that volume has a certain quantity to it. So what you start doing is chipping at the volume until you get to the end of it and it's over. Now, the problem with that, why it sounds obvious, but the problem with that is most people don't think that way. Most of the time, overwhelm kicks in. You start thinking about all the other things you got to do. You start thinking, well, okay, this part of the process needs more engagement and it's unlimited, and how do I do that? But if you take the process and break it down into specific parts, and each part is a milestone, and you tackle one milestone at a time until it's over, you're going to find that most of those things that you want to work on will finish. And lots of times I see people come to me and it's been 6 months and they haven't done anything. And I go, what happened? Well, I just got too busy. And that's understandable. There's nothing wrong with that. It is a human trapping. But what you need to do is go above it. A lot of these things are like beasts that you can take down. Why is it a beast? Because it's easy to fall into them, because it's easy to continue in the road that you're on. And it's hard to get out of it. However, that beast can be taken down by persistence, objective analysis, and I'm going to give you one tool and one solution that's going to make all the difference for you, which is to break things down. So the idea behind this is that you got to break the process into about 4 to 5 parts that are manageable. Don't try and take it into 50 parts. Don't do 17. Don't do 23. Just 4 or 5. My preference is 3. But let's say I'm giving you a little bit of leeway in here and say 4 to 5 at the most. So if you take it to 4 or 5 elements, then you start taking those and start working at them. So break it down into 4 or 5 elements, which is what we're talking about. But however, each one of them treated with a finite principle approach as well. So you take the first part and say, what is the beginning, what's the end? And then go work at finishing it up. If you finish it, then you're done. Then you have time to go to the next one. But at least you have specific milestones, specific points to complete and eliminate part of that volume. One major process that will have a big impact in your operation from an exit perspective, meaning that you start thinking, what is that one thing if I do would make my company valuation higher? You break it down into parts as boxes within the side of the big box. And you do no more than 4 or 5 of those. And you start executing. You finish one. You know when you begin and you know when you finish. And then you also know when the entire project is done, at what point it's done. And you keep reverse engineering it until you get it all done. If you do that once every 2 weeks, as I said, within 6 months, your company would be in a completely different place. That's my assurance to you. Because at that point, you've finished at least 2 major rocks in your domain. And you would be inherently more successful than 90% of the people out there. In fact, if you look at the 10% of the population that wins, that are successful in what they do, regardless of the field, by the way, it's not all about monetary things. It's because They focus on what they want. They have a beginning and they have an end, and they execute on that. And they don't let any overwhelm overtake them, because it's understandable if you're going to have overwhelm. That's normal. Don't worry about it. Don't feel bad. In fact, the best thing to do is to acknowledge it. Acknowledge that you have overwhelm. Once you know what it is, you're going to find ways to go around it. And the biggest thing you could do to remove that overwhelm is to start writing down all the components of the project you're looking at, all the components of the processes that you have, and then start executing. And you're going to find great amount of power in taking action. When you start moving, things happen. And that's my promise to you. Just move. Remember, action is everything. If you don't use it, you will lose it. I'm Rem Oculee, and I'll see you in the next podcast.